your session's up and running, I'm going to run and go make coffee because I haven't had my coffee yet.
As long as you don't miss the video.
When are you planning on doing the video?
Well, I want to do normal, telling them about their assignment or their class task, and then I'll start with that. So it's probably going to be a 15 kind of minute thing.
Okay, I'll be back by then. I don't normally take that long to make coffee, but I'll be there.
Okay, you're not having the whole bacon and egg, and then you should be fine.
Well, I don't eat eggs, so the bacon I need to get out the deep freeze, so that's going to take too long.
Okay.
So I'll be here.
Okay, great. Obviously, I know you have to do your thing, but I just wanted to have your opinion, your honest opinion on whether it works or doesn't.
Sure, not a problem. Okay, Brenda, just so that you know, we are streaming now properly on YouTube. So I'm going to start my screen share.
Okay.
I'm going to go on mute shortly. I'll be waiting for Renel and Kagiso.
Yes.
Okay, great.
I don't know if Ansu wanted an invite.
I think I just sent everything.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I like your little halo in your hair at the moment.
Yes, that's the freaking gray.
Okay, I didn't mean to point that out.
Well, you just did.
Well, you didn't have to state that.
I see we've got a couple of participants already, so we'll keep quiet on the gray.
Yeah, we've got 11 students already.
Okay. Morning, Kagiso.
Morning. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I see that I am seeing you later as well.
Yes, I just accepted the invite.
I saw that, yes. Oh, that's great. I'm just going to quickly do this.
Good morning.
Morning.
How are you?
How are you?
Good, how are you? Good, thank you.
Probably a little warmer again than you guys.
Yes, it's quite cold in Pretoria this morning.
I believe it's worse tomorrow.
Yes, a cold front's coming in from Cape Town. But I prefer the cold. It's nice. The air is nice and fresh if it's cold.
So you've caught on the fresh part now.
Yeah. Yes. How's the weather in Durban, Brenda? Hot.
Sunny. Well, I wouldn't say hot. It's fresh. But yes, the sun is out and there's no wind, and it's beautiful this time of the year. And also, what happens is, this is why we normally do the fun day this time of the year, because you're guaranteed of good weather. So yes, normally the students would be on the field wherever we're doing it, which school or munis, whatever, and we would start setting up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So it's nice and dark, and the atmosphere is fantastic because they've got coffee and working their little butts off. So yes, I'm really hoping we can still do that. Guys, okay. It's only a minute in, but it's me and my patients again. So we'll give a few more, but the biggest issue today is that I want to cover the class task.
Yes.
As well, because we've missed the one. So yes, I'm not going to waste time on covering that just now as well. We, being my fault, of course, didn't go into the class task chat. So we never got around doing motor development class task. I think what happens is we're focusing more on the semester modules than the year module. And I'm a little concerned that we might neglect our 300s. I'm going to just change that until everybody comes back. So what I'd like to do is go through class task, what would be class task 2, because it's directly related to the movement components that we're going to do today. So what's going to happen is, and I was in two minds whether I do class task first or whether I do the actual movement components. It's probably going to be best to start with the task and then the students will be able to see how the video that will be placed on ECI or the PowerPoint that gets placed on there relates to the actual class task. So I think it would be best if we just go through that, and hopefully then everybody would be able to get either on the live stream or watch after and reinforce how they would go about doing their class task. Okay. The class task that was going to be for the motor development, we are probably going to adapt. And I think fortunately we said right from the start that under the circumstances we will be, I don't want to say chopping and changing, but we would have to adjust here and there. And to make it or have a little more relief on the students. So what's going to happen is I'm going to adapt that first class task, and it will be linking onto class task 1 that's going to happen now. Okay. We still don't have enough, but I am going to start before we run out of time. So what I'm going to do is share the screen on the class task explanation so that all the students would be familiar with what is expected. So when we have a look at the class task, and this will be placed on, let's do that. This will be placed on ECI as well as a Word document so that you can use it as a student to actually put onto ECI when you load it. Okay, so a portal will be created, and that will happen today already. And I'll just establish how our timeline would be so that we can put this in such a way that you would be able to cope. But I think it's such a fun class task that you would want to do it as soon as possible. And I should get my background back for that because we need to get out on the field. This class task, and it was indicated on your changed COVID assessment guide. What happens here is, and I'll just point out a couple of the things that you would have to do an obstacle course. Now, this obstacle course will have to include the components of page 52 of COVAR. It's very hard at different points, or have 4 different obstacle courses for that matter, because then you would be able to include all the components or all the categories of movements that you find there on page 52. Also important, you have to use a variety of equipment. Now, obviously, we're setting this course up as if we would be on the field at a school for your grade 3 learners, as if you are the student teacher at the school. So you will be using school equipment, but you also have to use manufactured equipment. So in the photograph or the drawing that you're going to be doing, you need to include things that you would have to make or household items. So a 2-liter Coke bottle, but please don't get stuck on that. Everybody does that. Be creative. Your biggest mark here is going to be for creativity. Be original, and please let it be known between the 3 lecturers across campuses, our vast knowledge of when you have just copied and pasted something is definitely going to show. And if you look at this bottom part, I did say there, please be aware, any plagiarism, you will get naught. This might just be a 5% class task. The weighting is not so high, but all the weightings add up. So please make sure that you are creative. Be the teacher that we think you're going to be. Okay. Then obviously the hard copy or the template is here that you're going to use. There will be the portal where you can drop that. look at the rubric. You'll see now at the end of this document, there's a rubric that's going to guide you into where you need to pay attention to certain things, especially the components that you have to use. And when we get to the example, you'll see what I mean regarding the movement categories and movement components. And then when we do the clip at the end, so that you can see what we mean if I'm saying you need to cover all the categories. The plagiarism we covered. Obviously here, you would be putting in your movement components that you include. I've only put in 5. You could have more, but the requirement is that you would be putting in, where is it now? All the components from the categories here in point 2. You'll see we're going to be referring to point 3 at some stage a little later as well, okay? So when I'm making those or using those components, I have to indicate them here. And it could very well happen that you would have more. So it does make sense to list them there. I would also, and I'm just going to skip across, I've also left enough space, well, space for equipment. Yours would probably be bigger. It's a template, so you can work with it because it's a Word document. Also a description of the course, but you'll see I'm going to show you an example where they do the guidelines on the picture, okay? Obviously, you are not going to be doing anything from ECI Direct. You get your ideas, you are going to, like I said here, put your references in. Please make sure that if you're using these references, that they are very clearly marked. Don't just use things. Obviously, your ideas come first, and then you support it with whatever research you're going to do. So don't feel obliged to use the research, your own ideas only. But do yourself a favor and look at a couple of ideas as well. So yes, there's the referencing, the description of the course that you can put in words. And then the biggest thing here is you have designed. The class task is design and draw. Now, first of all, I'm going to take you to this drawing. And if you look at this, I know one of the other modules actually asked, and I might preach to the converted because many of you are more technologically advanced than most of the lecturers. We've seen some evidence of that from a Gauteng student. When you are going to be designing your course, bear in mind all the criteria that had been set up when we said what we're going to be looking at. When I'm designing now and drawing, I can go to insert and I can look at the shapes. Everything that I've built here, I've used shapes. Okay, so that is how I've built this up. And then of course I can put the wording in, etc. Nothing stops you, and this is where the creativity comes in, guys. You're going to be drawing and designing. So it very well could be that I would, in place of this one, for example, put a mini hurdle or a picture of a pool noodle, right? But in your referencing, you would have to make sure that everything you've used will be referenced, okay? So that would start my, and this is a very basic one. If you look at this, I am here looking at general space, and all these terminologies that I'm going to just quickly point out is what we're going to look at when we look at the components. I'm looking at the space, I'm looking at around, I am moving forward. I could use leap to get over, or rather, yes, let's get over this one. And then I'm going to use hopping and get onto the box. Then I'm going to just sprint, run, walk, crawl to the hoop that's on stands, and I can get through, around, over, on top, through. Already, I've looked at various components of movement, okay? And you'll see now when we get into the PowerPoint as well. What I've included here is a drawing. Now, this is where the technology could come in as well. You can set up one at home. And if you've got little ones that you are keeping distance and all those kind of things and have their masks on, that will make our task very authentic. You can use this as well. Be very careful though that it's your photograph, that you will be able to put in some description to some degree, because if you look here, we're looking at through, we're looking at between, under, across, we're looking at jumps. These are very small ones. We also have to indicate, like I said, you've got a class. Can you have 34 learners standing in a line to do one line of obstacle course? I could have 2 different lines. I could have a circle. I need you to play with ideas and put yourself in a scenario where you are at a school. Okay? I know that if there are questions that the panelists will have a look at them for me, either on the chat or the Q&A. Students,
And Brenda, just on that note, we have 2 concerns. The one is whether we'll have class next week if it is a public holiday, because Monday and Tuesday are public holidays.
Apparently not. Apparently, I'm speaking under correction, apparently not, although to my knowledge, we are actually down for a lecture. So at this point, I would have to confirm and I'll relay it to both of you so that we can convey to the students.
Okay, so students will get back to you on that.
At this point, quite honestly, we've been having holidays every week. Okay, so we can just keep going. That was my...
And Brenda, the second thing, just sorry to interrupt you, this task is due on the 30th of June, if I'm correct.
That's right. Yes.
Okay, so...
So we are giving enough time. I'm in 2 minds because we did miss the cutoff for today, actually, for the chat class task. So I will just bounce it off you two when we have our meeting a little later, whether we can afford to actually bring it forward, because they are, the students, you guys are going to have a task then for the holiday that's coming up. Okay, so that we're good and ready when the second semester starts, in whichever way it starts. Okay.
And then Michaela just asked, just to be clear, we are allowed to set up the obstacle course at home and take a picture of it and add it in. Yes, I think, please feel free to be creative and set up an obstacle course wherever you find this space for it. And then take a picture of it and use it in your class task. As long as it's original pictures, we'll be happy with it.
Yes, totally. But be aware, you have to, and if you look at the rubric, that's why I've pulled it up as well. If you look at the rubric, and I've said, and like it's been reiterated by Ronelle now as well, using the photograph, bear in mind that you could, for example, put the photograph of the different equipment, and that's going to lead to your next task, that you're going to be using in the whole setup. And then you would have to, in your drawing, indicate that you are going to do 5 lines of that, for example, to accommodate your full class, or that you might use 2, and that you will have 2 lines of the one obstacle course and 2 lines of the next obstacle course. Okay, so yes, by all means, I need you to be as creative as possible, but this I will not accept. I will not even look at the description. Right, so if you've just put this in there for me, I will not accept that unless I can clearly see that you have designed it so you will be in the photograph. And well, yes, that can be Photoshopped too, but we are trusting individuals. Okay, if we have a look at the rubric very quickly, use this as your guideline. We're going to be looking at the design and the layout. We're going to be looking at how you are integrating the components as in chapter 3 of COVAR, your textbook. Then we're looking at the equipment. Does it cover all 3 of the categories that I've asked for? The description Is it brief? And you'll see I'm not paying enough attention to the written description, because the task is actually about you drawing your plan, your field layout, etc. And then, of course, referencing. Although that is weighted very low, please bear in mind, if the referencing is not there and we suspect any plagiarism, because we're not putting this through Turnitin, because whatever you're going to be doing here is going to prove that you actually did your own homework. Okay, and I don't even want to harp on that negativity. Right, I'm going to move on then. This will be on ECI so that you can actually see it there, repeat, make sure. But now I want to get to the part where you have to be able to see what the components are all about. Okay. And when we look at chapter 3, there we go. When we look at chapter 3, we are going to look at the page 52, first of all, where we break down all the components throughout the chapter. So what I'd like to do, first of all, is make sure that you are familiar with what you're looking for. If I had to look at a movement where a learner is running around a cone, for example, is that individual making use of personal space or general space? Is that individual transferring body weight, for example? Is that individual using speed? Is it quick? Is it sudden? Is that individual relating to any piece of equipment? What is it, a locomotor, non-locomotor, or manipulative skill, right? So can you see that if I'm building my course, I would be referring to all of these, and you saw clearly that the task requires from you to use at least one of each of these components, okay? And you'll see that it's difficult just to use one. You will end up using more than one of each of these categories, right? So if we had to look at the following, first of all, we know that we've got locomotor, non-locomotor, and manipulative skills. We also know by now, because we've gone through these, my locomotor skills would be those ones that I move from point A to point B. My non-locomotor skills, those that would be done where I am. Manipulative skills, where I am making use of either equipment or other team members, okay? Other team members in our current scenario won't necessarily be included, especially if we have to jump over, crawl under, we violating each other's space. So we would have to be clever in how we could use other individuals in a team to be able to include learners as pieces of equipment, okay? If you think, and I'm just going to pause for a moment, a locomotor skill, think of a locomotor skill, and then think of a non-locomotor skill, right? Now think of a manipulative skill. Can you combine these three skills that you thought of? You thought of a locomotor skill, a non-locomotor, and then a manipulative. Can you combine these? If you can combine, for example, let's take leap. Leap, I'm moving from point A to point B. Non-locomotor skill, I thought of a vertical jump. A vertical jump does not take me from point A to point B. Hoop, I could do my vertical jump. From my vertical jump, I could pick up a beanbag and throw that through another hoop. That's a boring one, but you get the idea. Okay? Right. Those are the first ways in which the body will be moving. Then we look at the body awareness. Here we are transferring body weight. And as I'm going through these, I'd like you to think of a movement that you would be able to incorporate into this obstacle course of yours. If we think of the first example, very simple example, leap, jump, and throw, underarm throw. Can we recognize a transfer of body weight? Do we recognize balancing? Is there weight bearing at any point? Is there flight? Am I using shapes? Not just an equipment. Remember the body shape. We're now busy with the components of movement, the categories in which we can put our movement. And is there focus, right? In other words, if they had to throw, is there a focus on where they are throwing? Onto the target, for example, or through the target. So if you had to break down that example that we've used, recognize transferring of body weight, recognize balancing. We could obviously, once they've done the vertical jump, they could land in the hoop and balance on one leg, for argument's sake. Is there flight? When they did the leap, of course there's flight. Because they're in the air, flight would imply there is no body part touching the ground. Shapes and focus then as well. When we look at space awareness, now the very first one we're very familiar with, we know about our personal space, we know about our general space. Before we carry on, let's look at how can we relate personal space and general space in this case. The way I would set up my obstacle course would now determine whether my individual learner would be crossing over into the space of the other learners. So that comes into play already. Personal space would be when I am crawling through that hoop that I actually am going to throw the beanbag in or through. Okay, then I am going into that personal space of reducing my body shape as well. The directions, those are quite obvious. I could be jumping diagonal or leaping rather. I can leap forward. A leap backwards ain't going to be so successful. But I could, and we'll see. Wait, let's see when we get to the other direct or the pathways rather. Levels, I could be leaping high or low. I could be jumping high or low. Although low, we don't really want to jump. Big or small. And then we get to the pathways. They are almost jumped the gun. With the pathways, here we're looking at either straight, curved, or zigzag. So I could add, coming back to that example we've used, I could add 3 leaps. So I would be going diagonal from point A to B to C. So I could have a leap with a left, a leap with a right, before I then have to jump vertically in the hoop, for argument's sake. Remember, I'm giving a very random, simple example here off the top of my head. Okay. Right. The third at which I want the learner to move from point A to B. Or am I, for example, going to have a rhythmic beat? I have 2-liter Coke bottles that and I'm bringing it all back to a very simple example, remember? The free flow. Does textbook and make sure that you understand the free flow and the bound flow. The one would be where you can stop a movement. The other where it's not stoppable, it's going to keep flowing. Let's look at the leap. Free flow means there's an flow and bound flow. Then in the last one, we have got obviously where it's specific to manipulative skills, but it very well includes our locomotor and non-locomotor. When we look at the relationship that a learner has with the equipment, this could be near or far. It could be behind, in front, alongside. You arrive at this certain piece of equipment. You are going to be above or below certain pieces of equipment. If we look at this, what they refer to as apparatus or equipment, when my hoop, let's look at the example. I need you to identify these in the example. With the hoop that I have to run around, would I have to, or no, I'm actually using the one in the actual class task example. If we had to do the leap, okay, is that first hoop that I have to do the jump in, is it near or far away? Do the learners have to relate to that distance as to how much effort they will be putting into that movement? If the equipment is far away, can you see that the effort that they would be putting in would have to be more, right? When they're arriving at the equipment or in or on the equipment, like on that box, for example, that you saw in the class task, if you refer back to that, is it very clear what their relationship with that box would be if they had to jump on the box? Okay. So if I had to give you an example like this, would you be able to identify these different categories of movements? Matching movements, we're looking at mirroring, doing the same as a partner, for example, moving together and apart. If I look at together and apart, if, for example, we would have learners in our obstacle course having to move from the one end to the net or meet in the middle, for example, they are going to be rather, let's meet and apart, okay? They would be starting the obstacle course at different levels or different directions. They could be moving towards a certain point in the obstacle course, or, for example, equipment, they would be able to move towards a certain piece of equipment. Therefore, they would be meeting up, right? And then moving apart again, right? They could, for example, mirror a learner because of our situation currently. Let's bear that in mind because we have to consider this when we go back to schools. If my learners would, for example, and Musgrave, we use that as an example for warm-up at Munis, if we had to move together and we now had to move, say, do a high five to each other, would we, now obviously we won't touch, but in that moment, we can say, right, I'm going to be taking my right arm to the left in a wave and my left arm to the left in a wave. But my partner needs to now mirror me, right? So I would be getting the partners to also relate to each other and there's no contact. They're still in their personal space. So can you see how all five of these, and actually we can keep the ways the body moves, those are the separate groups of movements. Now we look into the categories. All of these, the directions, the time, the speed, the equipment, and how they relate to it, you should be able to identify that in your obstacle course. In a movement like that arbitrary example that I gave of a leap, vertical jump, and then throwing through a target, okay? Identify all of these when you are busy building your obstacle course.
Brenda, we have 5 minutes left.
Yes, I saw that, so I thought, okay, let me slow down. Okay, guys, you'll see I will be putting a similar PowerPoint on ECI, but it won't be quite the same. But in this PowerPoint, I'd like you to be able to identify with the ways the body moves, and we've already looked at locomotor. We've looked at non-locomotor. And then, of course, our manipulative skills and how you are going to be incorporating these into your obstacle course, okay? Then we have to move to, and what I've done, I've actually looked at all the 5 different categories. When we are aware of transfer of body weight, balance, the flight, the shapes, and we've gone through all of these now, I'd like you to make sure to be able to also, and this is what I've now done. Again, I've jumped the whole PowerPoint again. You observe the movements, for example, of this character. Now, would you be able to identify the elements that we've just looked at, just the body awareness? Can you identify the elements in what this character is busy doing? Can you, for example, see transfer of body weight? Did he transfer his body weight? I'm saying it's a he because they dance like that, because they're very funky. The girls can do it too. I'm sure the girls can do that too. Right, is there transfer of body weight? Yes, from legs to arms. Is there balance? At any point, is that individual in flight? Is this individual, let's not make it male or female, making shapes with a body? So that's focus as well. Is there focus? Would they be focusing on a certain point? Of course. Right. Can you see that I would like to make sure that you can identify the particular categories and particular movements? Yeah, I said design a movement pattern, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing. We have to consider the size, the pathways, the directions, the levels. We have to identify how the body moves, the time, speed, effort, force. If we have to look at these examples again, do we have speed? Of course, he's gone already. Do we have force? Okay, very simple examples again. The relationship between equipment, we looked at that as well. I see we've got 2 minutes. Is it safe? Of course, the equipment that we use, remember, it needs to be safe. Okay, manipulating is our last one then. Guys, obviously we rush through these things forever. I will get back to Gauteng lecturers regarding our Monday or Tuesday, sorry, Tuesday lecture. I would like to take us outside on Tuesday. So yes, let's keep it exciting and go outside. Hopefully everybody can set up either with cell phones or whatever they can. The weather is beautiful. And then you guys can show us how cold it is there. Right. I only saw a few chats. Okay, and it's nice to see that somebody is keeping hydrated while they're watching or while they're attending class. Remember, you can't take your juices and food into lecture halls. I'm just pointing that out. Gauteng, any comments, any support, any additions?
No, nothing from our side, Brenda. I don't know if the students have any more questions. If they do, please post them now so that we can quickly answer them. But other than that, I think you've covered important aspects. So thanks for that.
Okay. And Waterfall, all good?
No, nothing from my side. That was a nice lecture. I think it really helped. It should have helped with the task. So looking forward to those obstacle courses.
To mark them, hey? Yes, quite exciting. Guys, I'm hoping, and those that are live streaming and those that are watching after, that you are also excited and that we can bring that due date a little forward so that we can get hold of your material. Okay, guys, I see we are on time, and so is Warwick as well. Thank you, Warwick.
Brenda, we have one question.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's just Megan saying, thank you, looking forward to the outside lecture too.
Yay!
So Megan's up for a public holiday lesson. Great.
Oh, excellent.
You
Warwick,
enjoy the outside whilst I sit behind the computer. I'm feeling the love.
Oh, no, you're going to come. You're going to come.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for a great morning, and I'll see you guys soon.
Thanks, Warwick. Keep very
Have a good
well.
day. Goodbye.
Bye.